On this episode, the state highway in Battle Lake, Minnesota was rebuilt as a complete street. Art was an important part of the project. The police chief likes the slower traffic. We talk with a developer about pedestrians on Broadway in Fargo, North Dakota. We look at pedestrian planning by the Fargo-Moorhead Metro Council of Governments. Finally, we learn about the North Dakota Active Transportation Alliance. Stay tuned.
We're in Battle Lake, Minnesota, talking with Val Martin. What do you do for the city?
I'm the Clerk, Treasurer, and Economic Development Director.
What's this road that we're sitting next to?
This is Highway 78 and also Lakes Avenue.
Does this road look a little different than it used to a few years ago?
It does. Back in 2013, we did a project called Complete Streets. We worked with MnDOT. Basically, we had a 4-lane highway, and now it's a 3-lane highway. And along with that, we have larger, wider sidewalks and just a greater pedestrian, bicycle-friendly area.
How'd that all get started?
It started with a gentleman that lives just out of town that was actually on a MnDOT community, a MnDOT committee, and he and a gentleman we work with from Partnership for Health discovered that the Highway 78 was going to be redone and that Complete Streets was going to be an opportunity for the city of Battle Lake. And between the two of them, they approached the city council and said, hey, this is great, we should do this. This would really be a great thing for the city of Battle Lake.
What was Minnesota DOT's reaction when you went and talked to them about this?
I didn't work here at the time. From what I understand, they were a little surprised because the timing was pretty short. They weren't sure that we could get it done, but we were able to work really diligently. The committee at the time met quite often and were able to get it done. But from what I understand, and as I said, I didn't work here at the time, they were great to work with to get the project done.
Was there anything particularly complicated about widening your sidewalks and so on?
Again, I didn't work here at the time, but there was some opposition. People were worried about if you're making the width of your street smaller, then are you going to have issues with farm equipment because we have a farm community, and then also for truck traffic. So there was some opposition at that time, but for the most part, most people were positive about the change.
How's it worked out?
It's great. It's the safety factor. I think because of the changing it from a 4-lane to a 3-lane, it has slowed down the traffic. I think people are a little more aware. We have bump outs on the corners of where the crosswalks are, and of course you can see the pedestrians a little bit better. And just with the look of the downtown, we have a lot more people coming into our community. We've several new businesses, towards 20 new businesses. For a town of 1,000, we have about 13 eating places. 10 of them have liquor licenses or sit-down restaurants. It's been a great economic boom for our community.
If another town similar to yours is going to be having work done on their state highway, their main street, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that make sure that when you're working with MnDOT, you get some of the rules and regulations. We've had some concerns come up about that in the last year, that you get that taken care of right away, and so everybody understands what is allowed on the sidewalks. That's a big part of it, but I would recommend it to any community that wanted to do it. There are a lot of communities in our area that ask me, what are you guys doing in Battle Lake? We want what Battle Lake has. What's going on there? Even bigger communities. I was at a meeting a couple days ago, and a gentleman from Fergus Falls, which is a much larger community than ours, said, you should go to Battle Lake. They have so much going on. So that's been great.
We're talking with Reba Gilliand, who's chair of the Art Advisory Committee. What is the committee?
The committee is someone who thinks about the art in Battle Lake and writes grants to get it funded.
How did the committee get started?
When we did the complete streets in Battle Lake, we decided we wanted some public art. So we knew that LRAC, which is Lake Region Arts Council, which is our granting agency here for art grants, 9-county area, that they were giving $10,000, or you could apply for $10,000 from your city to do public art. So the Art Advisory Committee met for about a year to plan what kind of public art we wanted. And then we applied for the grant, we got it, and we completed it.
What sort of people are on the committee?
Well, it's a cross between artist and just simply businessmen. And we had someone on the committee from Partnership for Health who was very interested in bicycling and walking in Battle Lake. We had 2 business people, we had 3 artists, and then we had me, who's just the organizer, or the project manager who kept the project on track, wrote the grant, wrote the reports, etc.
What sort of art did you end up installing along the street here?
We ended up with 2 projects. The first one, we decided we wanted a place for people to be able to sit, or plants on these beautiful new sidewalks. And so we decided we wanted to represent what the city was. So it took us a long time to figure it out, but we finally agreed that we were 3 things. We were agriculture. We had a strong agricultural base. We were natural resources. A lot of people come here all summer long and have since the late 18th century for recreation. And we're also natural habitat. We have beautiful lakes in the area, a lot of wildlife. Glendalough used to be a nature preserve, wildlife preserve, so that's what we decided we were. And then we created mosaics to represent all 3 of those. 133 people worked 8 months, 3 hours at a time, 2 hours per week to get the project done, all novices. We had someone leading us, showing us how to do the mosaics. And then the second project, after we did that, after the street was done, we ended up with a closed alley that was an eyesore that was right in the middle of town. We decided we wanted that to be an art alley. So we created this big fish that we have. We actually didn't create it. We sent out an RFP to artists across the state of Minnesota, North and South Dakota, asking for what they would do here by way of an archway. And Sue Seeger from Elk River submitted this design, which we chose. She came up here, installed it, and it's been here for a couple years now. In addition to that, we wanted something that was community involvement, and so one of our community members decided that we should do a reverse coloring book on the asphalt. So one of the committee members drew all the fish designs on the asphalt, and we had a group of 70 people volunteering to come over 6 weeks to come paint the figures, fish and other aquatic figures on the asphalt. And we keep chalk there for the kids to come and color, and they do. Spend a lot of time out here. And the beauty of it is that every time it rains, it washes all the chalk off, and the kids can start all over again.
How important is it to have activities that children can do downtown?
We think it's extremely important. I mean, we are traditionally an older community. We have a lot of retirees here, but we are getting more and more young families moving here because of the school, very good school, and the quality of life here. So we feel like we need things for kids to do and for them to have fun and for them to be able to, how many places can you go and actually draw on the sidewalk? Not that many places. So it's really, for visitors and for the people who live here, it's really popular.
And one other One thing you have in the alley here is some planters.
Yes. We have a very active Boy Scout group here, and many of them go on to do an Eagle Scout project. And so one of the young men who was going to work on his Eagle Scout approached the Art Advisory Committee about doing planters. And so he led the project. I think it took him about, I don't know, from beginning to end, about 6 months. He designed the planters. He worked with a committee to decide if this is what we want. And then he led, I think, several Boy Scouts in building them. So we're very pleased with those two. Community effort.
So you have the Boy Scouts with your planters, quite a number of community members helping with the other works of art on the street. How important are volunteers to a town like this?
Oh my goodness, it's just, you can't even imagine what a small community is like without volunteers. I moved here from the Twin Cities, and I thought all this stuff just happened. It's just like it was always beautiful, and there was all these projects, and then I moved here 16 years ago, and I discovered that without volunteers, a lot of things just plain wouldn't happen. And not just volunteers for something like this, but volunteers in your churches, volunteers in your organizations, volunteers to do the planting and the watering. I mean, it's really the lifeblood of small towns, I'd have to say.
What's the future for public art here in Battle Lake?
Well, I think there's a bright future for public art, not only in Battle Lake, but we are very fortunate in Minnesota to have a state that really supports public art. And in fact, the people of the state voted to give, I think it's 3/8% of their sales tax to fund public art projects and to fund natural resources. So your parks and your trails. And so I think there is a very bright future for public art and for all things related to our quality of life here in not only the cities, but also in the small towns like Battle Lake, because of the people of Minnesota voted for it.
We're talking with Kent Courtlover, who's the police chief for the city of Battle Lake. What sort of traffic safety problems do you see in your city?
Well, the biggest problem we have in town is probably people making the U-turns downtown in the middle of the blocks. Other than that, things have been really reduced downtown as far as the speeds going through here. By the narrowing of the streets, people just kind of commonly or naturally just kind of slowed down. Before, it used to be a lot wider street with four lanes on it, 2 lanes going each way. And traffic just seemed to kind of just go through town a lot faster pace. With the narrowing factor, people just kind of tendency just to slow down a lot more now, and they're a little more curious to look and see what's in the downtown area by looking at the side streets. Our big rusty fish here, they'll take a look at that and stuff, and so there's a little more tendency just to kind of slow down and look around a little more.
How vital is slower speeds to safety?
It's extremely vital for safety. In our downtown area, we have a lot of people crossing the streets and stuff to go to different restaurants, different cafes we have here, our ice cream shops. So we get a lot of pedestrians just crossing the streets. So for people to slow down and be more aware who's around and who's walking, and bicyclists also, it's very vital to have people slow down and be more attentive to what's going on.
We're in Fargo, North Dakota, talking with Mike Zimney with the Kilbourne Group. What is Kilbourne Group?
Kilbourne Group is a real estate redevelopment firm. We focus on doing renovation of historic buildings and infill just in our downtown of Fargo.
What's the street we're on?
We're on Broadway. What we tend to think is the highest pedestrian, the main street of downtown Fargo, kind of the backdrop, our front door, our kind of the welcoming street of Fargo.
Has it always looked the way it is now?
It's kind of come full circle. So, I mean, this was the main street of Fargo historically, but as many streets and downtowns in the 1960s and 70s, kind of the focus became on moving traffic and traffic volume, and so the diagonal parking went away and became a 4-lane road. Down at the southern end, it became a pedestrian mall to try to meet, what was, the indoor mall retail experience that was happening at that point. So we've come full circle now, and now we're kind of back to this great, vibrant, pedestrian-friendly, awesome street.
Why would a street like that be important to your company?
Well, we're focused on doing mixed-use development, and so we want to have restaurants and active retail on the ground floor. That's what we always focus on. But if the street doesn't function in a certain way, if traffic's moving too fast, if there isn't on-street parking, if pedestrians don't feel comfortable, want to spend time here, those businesses are going to suffer. And so we really need to focus our investments on areas where there's pedestrian activity, where the street's been tamed, where traffic moves slow, where the storefronts just are visible as people drive by because they're not going by so fast. So the street is critically important.
How does a company like yours work with the city or the county or the state to communicate your needs and to make sure that you get the pedestrian spaces that are needed to make a thriving street?
Well, Broadway was reconstructed in 2001, and what we always point to is the number of private investments that have occurred on Broadway since that point in time, the number of storefronts that have been renovated, and we always kind of point to that and say, like, this is what's working, let's repeat this on other streets. So 2nd Avenue, which is perpendicular to Broadway, is being reconstructed, and they're narrowing it up. They're putting in wider sidewalks. They're putting in a protected bike lane at the intersection. They're putting in pedestrian bump outs. So we're seeing the city being a great partner in what's happening, and a number of other stakeholders have been advocating for these changes and for downtown and whole over the years.
So what are your company's plans for the future? You got more developments in this area coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. We only do development in downtown Fargo. Originally it started as kind of a project by our founder, Doug Burgum, to save historic buildings. He didn't want to see, these great old buildings and the history being torn down. And so he bought them as a preservation effort. Now we've moved into, we're a full-scale real estate development firm. And, originally it was renovating old buildings. We're now moving on to parking lots. So there's this, we have this big, missing tooth in the smile of Broadway here right behind us, this big parking lot. And so in the next 2 years, we'll be renovating that. We've got projects on the outside of Broadway where we're starting to do infill projects now. Mixed use, adding more residents, adding ground floor, active retail. So we're trying to expand what's happening, all the great success on Broadway to the areas, as it radiates out from Broadway now.
We're talking with Dan Farnsworth. Who do you work for?
I work for the Fargo-Moorhead Metro Council of Governments, and we'll just say MetroCog for short.
What is a Council of Governments?
Well, a Council of Governments would be kind of another name for a metropolitan planning organization. Every metropolitan area, which is 50,000 people or more, has one, and so we are the transportation planning organization for the Fargo-Moorhead community. So there's about 5-6 of us that work for it. It's not a small, it's a small agency, but but we do transportation planning. So that means vehicle traffic that we take a look at, but also pedestrian, bicycle traffic, transit, and just any other related planning activities is what we do.
What sort of planning have you been doing for pedestrians lately?
Well, we maintain a bicycle pedestrian plan. Every 5 years we do one. And so we just completed our last one last year. And so some of the items that we do would be, as far as the bicycle aspect, would be, where the new facilities, bike lanes might go. For pedestrians, we see ways, we engage with the public and find ways to make it more bicycle and pedestrian friendly. And so one of the things that we do is we check with the public to see what is it that you want. What can we do to make our community more pedestrian friendly? And one of the things is that they're looking for is more education. And so we are providing some education to the public in various ways. We have some Access TV videos that we have been running, and there's been a billboard that we put up to help with awareness for bicycle and pedestrian activities. So those are just some of the things we've been doing.
And Broadway here was redone. It's a little more pedestrian friendly than maybe it was at some point.
Mm-hmm.
What role would Metropolitan Planning Organization play in something like that?
Well, we are involved in certain studies. I was not around about 15 years ago when this study was done, but we do various studies for corridors. So, and one of the things that we do have as a organization is we have adopted a complete streets policy for this area. So whenever jurisdictions are going to be studying a street, we push them to look at complete street options, and this is very much a complete street here.
And this is perhaps one of the higher pedestrian activity areas in the metro area. Mm-hmm. What can you do for pedestrians in some of the areas that don't look like this?
Well, like I said, the complete streets policy. So if there is a new roadway project going on, we can take a look at ways of maybe reducing the lanes if there's not that need for so many lanes of traffic. We can reduce that down, have some on-street parking to help slow down traffic. We have some bulb outs at the intersections to help with pedestrian movements and slow down traffic. And so there's we'd have landscaping to kind of help with aesthetics and help encourage pedestrians. So there's just a lot of things that we can do through our complete streets policy and through corridor studies. And I think this place is becoming more and more pedestrian friendly just by looking at the different options that there are out there, the different case studies like what's happening here. Now there's there's a few different jurisdictions in our planning organization, West Fargo-Moorhead, and we're looking at some corridors where something similar like this could be done.
If I were to come back in 5 years and you're working on your next ped and bike plan, mm-hmm. What would you like to be able to show me?
I would like to be able to show you, well, we collect a lot of data. That's one thing I haven't talked about with you yet, but we collect data for, we have automated counters that count pedestrians and bikes going by. We have a pedestrian counter just down the street here, and we have about 350 pedestrians an hour that just go down Broadway is what our counter is showing. And so that's just an hour. So we'd like to see, as more and more things happen downtown, to see just more increase in that traffic, not just here, but throughout the area. And there's a lot of infill going on around the community. That was City of Fargo's top priority from their last plan, and they're implementing it. There's a lot of infill projects going on in vacant places downtown that are staged as parking lots, and all of a sudden you have these 5-story apartment buildings going up, and so it's bringing a lot more life to downtown, making things more walkable, more easy for transit, more bikeable, and all that.
We're talking with Justin Kristen with the North Dakota Active Transportation Alliance. What is the Alliance?
The North Dakota Active Transportation Alliance is a statewide grassroots effort to make biking and walking safer in the state of North Dakota. And I'm a 11-year resident of Fargo, and excited to get this effort off the ground and share it with other cities in North Dakota.
What's involved in putting together an organization like yours?
Well, we need to find the energy and the motivation. We're digging around right now to meet people in different cities, Minot, Grand Forks, Bismarck, Williston, and trying to get these folks together, get them on the same page, and show them the value of walkability in the state of North Dakota.
And we're in Fargo, way over on the eastern end of the state.
Yes.
The state's here a little bigger than like in New England.
Sure.
How do you overcome that problem of distance between all these cities?
That's a good question, John. It's a challenge. I think that's where technology comes in, and it's getting in a motor vehicle and meeting some people, shaking some hands, and sharing the message of walkability, bikeability in the state. I think North Dakota is a sleeper state. I think we have a lot of value here, clean air, great cities, as you can see from downtown Fargo. It's It shows a lot of promise for business and economic development, getting that message out to other cities and states by meeting folks and getting on the phone. Lots of work.
And you have to work with the state government and state agencies, or you have to work with each individual city government to try to get the policies that'll help?
I think it's going to be a full breadth effort. We've been working with the DOT, the safety office, sharing our message and our concerns about bicyclist and pedestrian safety. It's getting down to that regional level through the councils of government. There are 3 in North Dakota, and then at our local government level, and sharing information about safety and economic development. It's a full breadth effort.
And when you start talking to people about pedestrians and walkability, does that hit home with people?
I think we have some work to do. I think it gets attention when there are injuries and fatalities, unfortunately. It makes the media. But beyond that, I think we need to push around the economic development and the idea of livability and value. We all know what health insurance costs are these days. To get folks out and get them activated on sidewalks, shared use paths, is valuable, and it's going to save them some serious money in the long run. So it's a message we need to get out there through public health and local towns and county government, and through that I think we'll see gains, big gains over time.
And have events like Walk to School Day and the concept of safe routes to school, have those been popular here in North Dakota?
We have public health is aware of those programs and the DOT, but I think it's been more of a fiscal, financial kind of situation where we accept your applications, we'll issue the money, the grant money. Programmatically, I think we've seen some efforts at local level, but I think we need a group like the Alliance to get the different communities together so they know what they're doing and they can share that information, share it out, and grow those programs. They're wonderful for kids and families, and I don't know that enough people know about them.
Visit us on the internet at www.pedestrians.org.